What is up, gamers? Welcome back to another attempt at writing this book. Now, as you can see from my screen here, kind of upgraded a little bit. I've been using StreamYard, the goats, and part of me forgot that you can go live with StreamYard. You don't just get to use them for podcast episodes. You can use them for everything. So pretty cool. So we got some banging background music here. I'll probably cycle through it and hopefully the volume's fine. And got some nice background here. Got the screen up here. Like, you don't just have to stare at my mug the whole time. Now that's legit. Okay. So right now, working on a book. The worst at live streaming everything. So I can't remember what last I was working on. Actually, I do. It was the scene where he is reminiscing with the other member of the task force. Yes, I remember that. I don't remember how many pages I had written. Right now I'm sitting at 181 pages with a word count. Ayo! 69,000 words. Let's go, baby. Okay. Chat. Am I going to clip that? Probably not. I'll forget. But 69,000 words. That's pretty neat. So there's a few words written. That, of course, encompasses not only this book, but also working on the other two as well. If you don't know, this is going to be a 3-part book series as a kind of like foundational. This is the bread and the butter. And now we're going to throw in the future like bacon and meat and make this giant, yummy sandwich of a story. But for now, I'm sticking with the bread. Probably focaccia. I love focaccia bread. But 3 books, because ultimately I started writing it as one book, and I was like, gee, this is a lot of story for one book. I'm already at freaking almost 70,000 words, and I'm maybe a quarter of the way through the book. I've been working on part 1, so there's 3 parts in total. You have 1 part for each town that he visits, and kind of works in. So right now I've been working on Fayetteville, and fingers crossed I will have Fayetteville wrapped up. It looks like chapter 15, chapter 16 is about when part 1 will finish. Is a doozy. It's 4 total kills for part 1. Each part will have 4 total kills. If I didn't already mention this is very spoiler heavy. I mean, everything about this is a spoiler. If you want to look at this after you've read the books, money. You're gonna have to wait a while though, because I haven't finished them and I haven't published them, obviously, because I haven't finished them. So, but this is kind of like a log, so to speak, of me writing, and it's neat. In the very least, I can look back on this and be like, that's cool, or man, I've really improved. But this lives as kind of like a living testament to the book writing process. I don't think at least I can't think of any other author who's used the YouTube medium in this way. So, points for originality, baby. Podcast and a live stream? Who is this guy? Okay. So, we're working on, right now, chapter 13. Basically, the way I set up my chapters is whatever songs that I listen to kind of like get me in the mood for the chapter writing. I'm going to list at the front end or front like of the chapter. People will put like messages or asides or artwork or whatever. I'm going to have those. It's going to be my thing. I'm terrible at writing them down though. And obviously the chapter is not going to be named that. That would be a dumb chapter name. But it helps me know what, scatterbrain, all that. So I also listen to war. Begins with war. Of course, I listen to Fortunate Son. It's war. That's the song. That's war song. What was the other one I listened to? It was by the Doors. It was The End by the Doors. Cool. So, basically the setup to this chapter is we kind of finished here, chapter 11, with the reminiscing. Chapter 12 is going to go into survivor's guilt. It's not going to be this short. I just haven't really gotten into it. Got to be in the right mindset to write something very dark. As you can tell by the lines, it's going to be a very not happy chapter. But chapter 13 is on to the fourth kill, which is Mr. Giardo. Mr. Giardo plays a very important role because he's the first big bad, essentially. One of three of the big bosses that guy will end up going against, main guy. He also represents something that main character just hates, loathes. After the Belle scenes in her chapters, because, Mr. Giardo, her boss, and the whole kind of relationship there, there's tension, to say the least. So this is a kill that he readily accepts. But instead of starting with, the same format of he's at the meeting, they do the warno, get the packet, going from there. The aside starts with, I've killed many people. At this point, I have lost count. War is a hell of a drug. Some moments are forever seared into my eyelids, haunting me for eternity. Other moments, no matter the size or scope, are merely forgotten, blocked out. Does not mean they were unimportant, just simply not enough. Not enough room. Does not mean they were not important. See, this is why I reread things. Crazy, right? As a child, I worried that I would reach a point where I could no longer learn. True story. The idea that my brain was finite, that at some point it had to stop adding data. I don't know if I like that. That at some point it would reach capacity. I like that a lot more. Never did it occur to me that storage would always be there, just not for the pleasant memories. I do not remember my first kill. Most soldiers can pinpoint the exact date and time, usually the nitty-gritty details too. For me, I think it was somewhere in India. India is considered the bloodiest conflict the United States ever engaged in. Bloodiest conflict, bloodiest front. I think conflict. We'll stick that for now. The casualties beat out those of Russia during both the world wars combined. Both the previous world wars, because this is World War III. Unbeknownst to the world, India was breeding like crazy in the decades leading to the war. China had created the overpopulation policies, but India, they could almost see the future. They knew they were treading in deep waters and wanted to be prepared for anything. This extreme foresight led to some of the harshest battles with the least experienced troops. Cannon fodder, meat for the blender. It was not long after finishing my training that I was sent to India, barely 22, with a huge chip on my shoulder. I need to confirm his age. I have the timeline, but I haven't sat and confirmed it. I think it is, because he joins at 21. Because he gets notified they're going to start the draft and go ahead and enlists. Goes through Special Forces selection, SFS, and then ends up breaking, I think, his hip or his back. Some big bone breaks it. And then because it's broken, obviously he can't continue the training, even though he was pretty far into it. He'd already completed Airborne, Air Assault, and Ranger School. So they were like, well, I mean, we gotta use this guy still, right? And technically, having passed infantry school at Benning, or whatever it's renamed to now, it's Benning in the book, because Yep. He was then relegated to 11 Bravo infantry, and I had to include Hua, mainly just for my brother, because he's gonna laugh at that. And then his unit, I'll just read it. Infantry, Hua. My unit was the 288th Brigade, 72nd Bat, 1st Co. So, just for the jargon, battalion, 1st Company. The Armored Devils. I love that name. I just came up with it on the fly. Crazy how imagination works. They tested us during basic, and apparently being the foremost expert on the mech suit, I did well. They naturally shuffled me into an XO unit, but my skill did nothing to elevate me. In fact, it was the opposite at first. You are the dumbest motherfucker I've ever met, Private, Staff Sergeant Williams proclaimed. God knows how you lucked your way into my unit, but could you try and not fucking everything up? This, of course, was in response to me not blousing my boots correctly. A natural response. A natural retort. Sure. Well then, Private, you get the luxury of leading the pack during this morning's run. I stifled my complaints. We ran at least 8 miles every morning in order to earn our chow. Being at the 8 miles in our suits. Something I have to clarify, because 8 miles slick running every day is kind of crazy. But in the suits, it makes a lot more sense. Earn our chow. Being at the front meant that you had to be the pace setter. Kicker is, if Staff Sergeant did not like your pace, he would berate you and throw things at you. Hindsight showed me the purpose of this torture. I learned how to handle stress quite well. We had finished lunchtime chow when Williams informed us that our afternoon was to be spent sparring. Though the Exos were specifically designed not to be weapons, we had to know how to handle them as such. That included hours upon hours of sparring in them. Never once have I complained about cardio after getting out. In fact, I really enjoy a morning run now. It took me years to get used to the quiet while running. Sparring typically lasted around 3 to 4 hours, 15 minutes for a warm-up and cooldown. Matches last 30 minutes each. In all other martial arts, that is far beyond the norm. We would fight until we would collapse, then get woken up with water and a short rest. Then back to it. For us new guys, we had no idea what the purpose was. Hard to understand the grind without seeing the outcome. Our questions were answered when one night, the worst happened. Fob Dell was the most forward base in the own land of India. We had constant sorties being flown, and troops stopped here last before heading out to the front. Our unit had the luxury of being support for base response, supposedly no chance of going over the line. That all changed when the air raid sirens went off. That's gonna be... Here we go. Cover! Screamed Dowling as the first bomb impacted. Jet engines screamed overhead. Whistling indicated the munitions were inbound. The fob was barely larger than 4 city blocks. They nearly leveled everything. Armored Devils had enough sway with the local brass that we lived in our bunkers with our suits. The ground shook, dust breaking free from the ceiling. Massive explosions rocked everything. The lights went up quick. Eternity passed over as we braced. Fear crept up to even the most seasoned. Indian Air Forces had never come this close before. They were too embroiled in defense. This event became known as the Initial Offensive, aptly named. All over the conquered lines, FOBs were being bombarded. Our anti-aircraft capability was limited due to supply lines not being fully established. This bit us in our asses. When finally the noise stopped, a deafening silence fell. No one moved. Hell, it sounded like no one was breathing. Finally, Staff Sergeant Williams stood up and took a quick head count. All present and accounted for. Thank fuck. That needs to be italicized. Massive bunker door groaned open. Dust flooded in. Moonlight was shrouded by a thick cloud of debris. I crawled out and surveyed what was left. Utter destruction. I should say nothing, utter destruction. Yeah, that makes more sense. Our flight line was Now, a simple dirt trench. The command buildings reduced to rubble. Only the bunkers remained. Only we remained. Of the 4 other bunkers, only 20 additional survivors were found. All were munition troops, saved by the midnight duty they had hated. They had hated so much. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Talk about a change in perspective. Am I right, ladies and gamers? Williams called for everyone to pay attention. The shell shock faded in the face of authority. One lone officer had survived, an ammo lieutenant fresh to the fray. She abdicated the authority to Williams. Listen up and listen well. The time for processing this will come, but it is not now. We are all that is left here, meaning the responsibility of holding the line falls to us. First course of action, we need to take stock of supplies. All munitions troops, see the LT for assignments. We will use the Devil's Bunker as our operations area. All food, water, and weapons should be stored there. Walk down the armament vaults and ensure nobody gets froggy. My guys, make sure your suits are good to go and fan out and search for survivors. We will hold this line no matter the cost. Search for additional survivors. Yes, they already found some survivors. Someone give me a working radio and a full sit rep once all tasks are done. I'll be in the bunker working out a defense plan. Everyone scurried into action, eager to put their minds to something besides sorrow. I don't know if I like sorrow there. Something besides what was in front of them. Okay, yeah. I made sure my suit was solid. And went ahead and hopped in. If there were survivors, I figured I would need to move some rubble to get to them. Others followed suit. Soon we scoured the whole base. No other survivors. A massacre. Staff Sergeant Williams was conversing with the other NCOs, getting a coherent plan together. I walked in to report our findings. Most men frowned even deeper, slouching more after the message. We had a total of 50 able bodies. Abysmal. That should be. I lingered after giving the report. Williams locked eyes with me. Need something else, soldier? I can't decide an accent, so forgive me. That was the first time he called me that. The notion was not missed. Sorry, I volunteer for the first guard rotation. He nodded, a slight sign of respect. Grab 2 others and start patrolling here. He pointed to his map. And here. Standard laps, third man is oversight. Swap every 30, rotate out after 2 hours to the next team. Dismissed. I turned around, grabbed my 240, and went outside. We patrolled for 3 days before word finally came through the radio. Apparently, everyone had been hit. We had somehow been the lucky ones. Most had less than 20 survivors. So obviously, heavy, right? Not the most brevity-filled one. My thoughts to how this is going to continue, because obviously this is just an aside. I have written out all the history for this world. I obviously tweak little things as I go along and write more, but I'm aware of how the entire history folds out. Kicker is, writing the nitty-gritty little battles and the interactions and all that, that's where I kind of peel back the layers, right? I've got a good overview of everything, but then I kind of dust off and get a better idea of what I'm looking at. So I try to treat this with as much delicacy as I can, because I know these are going to be some of the more impactful moments in the story. This is the moment where you're getting a flashback, right? Where you're getting to understand more and more about main character's motivation, how he came to be who he is, and kind of build up that idea. I haven't really set aside a like a bam, bam, bam. These are the flashbacks, and this is what it's leading to. I've honestly just been kind of going with the flow. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, this section is going to be covering over this topic. This is how it's going to kind of hit. And then suddenly I'll be writing, and it'll just happen. He'll have a flashback. Sometimes, like one of the ones is he was looking at a painting, and the water reminded him of the cold waters that he had waded through to get into the Chinese shore, right? Something like that, a little trigger. In this case, his tangent, his aside about kind of the meaninglessness, if that's a word, of killing. And how, in his mind, though he was not born a killer, he wasn't made a killer either. It just kind of existed. It just kind of wriggled out into him. Like one day, he was just chosen. All right, no big spoilers. No big spoilers. But it's churning and it's working for a reason. So, lucky ones. Most had less than 20 survivors. Morale was at all-time low. A few suicide attempts had already been thwarted. Thankfully, no other attacks occurred. Five days after the massacre, 5 days after the bombing, there we go, we got word from higher command that we to leave behind a few troops, that we were to push inland. They told us to leave behind a few troops to guard and send the rest ahead. A huge retaliatory? Is that? Nope, not even close. Well, kind of close. Huge retaliatory strike was being planned, and they needed scout reports. Staff Sergeant Williams, that'd be next paragraph. Staff Sergeant Williams assigned 2 of our older NCOs to stay behind with the MUN's personnel. The LT would keep order, and the NCOs and the infantry would train, I know that autocorrected them, train them to stand guard. Yeah, feasible, I'd say. That's something potential, augmentee kind of thing, Let's see. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. A real mission. So often during training and busy work, it was easy to lose sight of the big picture. Now was the time to utilize all I had learned, all I had become. We gathered 5-day assault packs full of supplies and stored them in our exos. It's like the exosuit in my mind. I'll probably have one of my artist buddies sketch up like a schematic, but it similar to the like Edge of Tomorrow exoskeleton kind of idea, where it's just extendo boy, bigger than power armor, obviously, But it's made to be mobile, be fast, fuel efficient because it runs on cold fusion, but also to have a great storage capacity. And so, kind of like up and down the arms, and then on the back, especially, and then down the legs, there's compartments everywhere that can seal. Some of them can be refrigerated versus heated. And then the whole suit is kind of like framework, but can be sealed up for weather and can pretty well be airtight, running its own oxygen, everything. So, like, this suit is pretty freaking advanced, chem resistant. Like, the whole design that Click pushed was all about defense of the soldier, not offense. He did not want them to be used as weapons of conflict and war. He merely wanted to protect soldiers. So, like, the strategy was they would push the exo units front first. Then immediately after would be your basically hard armor, so tanks, Humvees, whatever it may be that was assaulting at that point. And then you would have your soft targets behind all of those. So your light infantry, rangers, everybody. And so then from there, they had the full force of a basically line or two of exo units ahead of them that were just soaking up the bullets. They would climb on top of the vehicles and use those systems in order to shoot over the exos in order to kill people. It became a very efficient tactic, and so typically they would at least have 2 to 3 mechs on a fire team in order to ensure not only somebody could carry all the supplies. Rucking wasn't really becoming a thing anymore because the mechs could carry it all for them without breaking a sweat. But also they could form basically wedges or slants or whatever sort of formation they needed in order to protect those soft targets. You basically had a mobile command center that you could run, like a full defense that you could run with these exosuits. And the cold fusion generator didn't need to be swapped out. It only needed to be routinely cleaned because of the nuclear waste. However, cleaning it was just basically removing the filter, taking out the waste using like proper bagging and everything, and then cycling it back into the power source, because the waste and the power would just constantly cycle, thanks to like Click's refined design, if you will. It's science fiction, not science fact. None of it's real. I don't care that cold fusion's not real. Deal with it. It's a story device, and it's cool, and it's basically magic, but I'm not going to spoil anything more. But yeah, exos, neat. Back in the story. Okay. Exos, store them in our exos. Plan was to split up into 4 groups, each with a sergeant at their helm. I was promoted to specialist and given command over to other privates. Nah, I'll save that. All right. At their helm. Cool. Excuse me. Each with a sergeant at their helm. I was, fortunately put on Staff Sergeant Williams. Next, fortunately put with Staff Sergeant Williams. Each team would push out at a certain angle with a designated objective. Okay, so now's the time I research India. I'm gonna pull up my phone because I I want to have some sort of idea in my mind as to like where they are and what they're going after. Very minimal research, of course. So, India. Show me a map of India. Why India is reaching out to the Taliban now. Female Indian bodybuilders. You know, maybe I should hop off the internet. Okay, alright, I'm pulling up maps. Okay, India. Yes, the country. Okay. So, obviously, Mumbai, big port city. They are very importante to story. However, I think it was a different city that ends up being like their last stand, but I'm not going to touch into that now. Something more centralized. Might be Jaipur. I don't know. We'll figure it out later. Anyway, I think probably the most reasonable place for us to have been able to push in successfully at, right? Because in the story, India conquers Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and then pushes into like Myanmar, because China conquers Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan, obviously. North Korea pushes into South Korea, and they are fighting currently over mainland Japan as well. China took Mongolia with the help of Russia. Big war kind of thing going on here. India pushed against Pakistan and Afghanistan, but obviously turmoil, tough. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, as well as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all fell to Russian influence. So Afghanistan and Pakistan are holding out. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Saudi, Yemen, Oman, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, all of those, Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iran, if I didn't already say that, they all were very quickly, because this is like the deviation happened after the Mujahideen had run the Soviets out of Afghanistan. Terrorism sure picking up. However, this is pre-GWAT, and so thanks to the president at that time, we were able to broker peace negotiations with the Middle East and kind of nip terrorism in the bud, and then wipe out the rest of the terror cells that resisted, and basically created a safe-ish Middle East, at least for the time being during the war. The way U.S. established military bases all throughout, kind of eased a lot of the tension there. Obviously, Africa still wasn't doing good because Somalia and everything still happened. So Somalia, Djibouti, not great to go to. But I'd say India, probably the most probable place for us to push into, is not Pakistan, because holy cannoli, trying to push over the Himalayas, because that's to the west is the Himalaya. No, to the east is the Himalayas. That's what I was thinking of, like Nepal, Bhutan. But Pakistan is still ungood to go through. I mean, we could like Karachi, and then push into it there. I'm still thinking coast. I'm thinking Sri Lanka. I'm thinking that we managed to kind of get a establishment on the Maldives, and then we were able to push through Sri Lanka. And then from Sri Lanka, we conquered that whole area and used that as a fighting ground. And then mainland, we're able to get into like kind of the Tamil Nadu, probably butchered that area. That area. Okay, cool. We'll do the Brihadazira. Totally butchered that temple. That looks cool. Little Hindu temple. Alright, that's going to be the objective for the lad. Okay. Our objective was the Brihadiswara temple. The coalition forces had managed to conquer the Maldives as well as Sri Lanka and used them as staging grounds. From there, we pushed into mainland India and conquered the southern tip. Cool, makes sense. Continuity, right? But since it's fiction, still doesn't go too far in depth. So that's okaysies. That's a neat looking temple, though. So we'd conquered most of the tip. Well, okay. From there, we pushed in and conquered the beaches of the southern tip. Yes. Cool. I wonder what not temperate. What's the environment right here? Let me see if I can. Terrain. I didn't do it. Satellite. Show me the blueprints. Okay. There's a bird sanctuary not far from there. That kind of gave me clues. Okay, kind of like flat, marshy maybe. Yeah, kind of like flat, marshy, swampy kind of area. From our point at Patukotai, it was a look at me, big brain Brad. Okay, this to the Brihadiswara temple. Cool. An hour, 49 kilometers. It was a 49-kilometer trek. Once we got to the temple, we were to report our findings and hunker down. I have never been more grateful for cardio training in my life. We managed to what's the word I'm looking for? It's whoop. Oh man, what's the word I'm looking for? We managed to like travel to distance. Gosh. Alright, I gave up on that. I think my flow state started to dwindle. It just hit midnight here, which is 40 minutes. Not too bad. all in all, working on getting that the battle scenes out there. This chapter is going to be long, and it's going to be split up. That's why I started chapter 13. Chapter 14 is also going to be about the kind of re-kill, but yeah, like this chapter is going to be probably longer than Belle's chapter, if I had to guess, because her chapters, I think, were like 90 pages, 80, 70 or 80, 90 pages. I don't know, something up there. Big number of pages for her section. So I don't know. This already, I can feel the kind of tug of the story to tell, because not only am I about to tell, there's a long story about the battle in India and their kind of his experience with it, but then I also have to go through and talk about him eventually encountering Mr. Giardo and that whole dichotomy, and Mr. Giardo's psychology is very interesting. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Thankfully, if I get burnt out, I have so many more chapters with so many different stories that I can sit and write on. I've also been working on book 2 and 3 at the same time, kind of drawing inspiration in long shower thoughts or just wayward appearances. I'm like, oh, well, this would be really cool if I did this, or man, maybe his character influence would lead him towards this, or political intrigue. So, neat stuff. Obviously, I didn't have a single live viewer, rip, but again, these are meant to be more of a log. They're me just doing my thing, I don't particularly care about the views of these. I don't really care if they're successful, because at the end of the day, it's unique to me, because I haven't heard of anybody else doing it. It's unique to me, and I think it's cool. But with that, we'll go ahead and say farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, and the other goodbyes.